What is going on, everybody? My name is Eric, and you're listening to the Unlockables podcast, the story of video games, the people who play them, and the memories made along the way. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, wherever, whenever in time and space you might be located, always appreciate you carving out a little bit of time every week to listen to what I have to say. Now, enough of the boring stuff, because I am very excited to have on the podcast this week one of my very good friends, bonfire enthusiast and avid praiser of the sun, Dave Jackson from Tales from the Backlog. Dave, how you doing? Oh, and
doing good, man.
We got Rookie too? Am I saying it right?
Rookie's here. Yeah, as you were doing your introduction, Rookie decided to start tearing off the lining from the bottom of the chair I'm sitting in. So I'm picking it out. He's a schnauzer, so I'm picking it out of his beard right now. Hey, everybody. Good to be on the show.
That's adorable. I'm sorry, Dave. This is just a Rookie episode now. You're taking backseat, unfortunately.
You're going to get Rookie's gaming history starting now, yeah.
Excellent. I'm sure he's as good at Dark Souls as you are. So I'll just get Sora in here, and then we'll just have the dogs do the podcast. I'll upload it to YouTube. We'll call it a day.
Yeah, we'll probably get a lot more engagement that way, right?
Just a million views for like 30-second clip, easy. That's I don't know why I wasn't doing it that way before. So Dave, how you doing, man? What's going on?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Like I said, other than picking the lining from my chair out of my dog's beard so he doesn't actually eat it, I'm doing good. Life is good. How you doing, man?
Doing pretty good. Finally got a chance to work on this show after all the madness, but excited, and I appreciate you coming on. This will be the second episode of the podcast, and for just very enthusiastically agreeing to come on. I really appreciate it. It's still a little bit weird for me. I normally do the show by myself or with Tom, so it's weird for me to ask other people to come on. So thank you. I appreciate it very much. But enough of the boring stuff. Let's talk about the goods, right? Let's talk about games. So have you been playing anything good lately?
Okay, so this is you caught me at a very interesting time because I finished all of the games that I was playing because Elden Ring, as we're recording this, Elden Ring comes out in about 22 hours. It will unlock on my PS5. I've been watching the countdown.
It's a game in and of itself.
Yeah, so like I finished all my games and I'm not playing anything at this current moment because as soon as Elden Ring drops, I will focus 100% on that. But I did finish, let's see, in the last couple of days, I finished playing It Takes Two. I finished playing Yakuza Like a Dragon.
Oh, nice.
And Thomas Was Alone. Yeah, those three I finished in the last couple days.
So you just pretty much cleaned the slate for this. You're ready to go.
Yeah, I like this is probably the most I've ever planned or like scheduled my gaming. It's not really how I do things, but I was like, okay, Elden Ring drops February 25th. You have to finish Yakuza before that. At least finish Yakuza. So
yeah, I saw you post your tweet where you keep your thread of games finished. So I'm like, okay, he's clearly clearing the deck for Elden Ring.
Yes,
are you doing, when I talked to a couple other people, they have done the whole strategy of where they've muted everything on Twitter, everything on social media, what they can to mute Elden Ring and anything possible for it. Are you kind of doing that to go in blind before I say too much or anything? Have you seen any of the reviews or anything going on?
I have not watched any gameplay videos. I have not watched any reviews. I've not read any reviews. I have the words Elden Ring, ER, Elden, and also Ring, and From Software. All of those things are muted on Twitter right now. I'm trying to go in as fresh as possible, but I do know that like as we're recording this, the Metacritic score is incredibly high. That's all I know. And like I know basic things, but like for the last month or so I've been on blackout. So
I think my favorite reaction to just everything kind of Elden Ring related is literally minutes before we started recording, I saw a tweet that said, they're like, I can't wait for Horizon 3 because a week after we'll get the best game of all time because Forbidden West just launched last week and now we're getting it's shaping up to be an incredible game in Elden Ring for sure. So.
And Horizon Zero Dawn, I guess, launched like 1 week before Breath of the Wild. Is that right?
Wow, just terrible. Maybe Guerrilla needs to just plan a little better launch window next time.
Well, they said that. The people say that, but then I saw a figure that Horizon Zero Dawn has sold more combined than the entire Dark Souls series put together, so they're doing fine, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's impressive. Oh yeah, so I'm sure they're just laughing to the bank. They're like, Elden Ring, not even worried about it. They already have the money. So
Yeah, for as popular as like the Dark Souls and Elden Ring, I think is like within maybe like our community of people who play a ton of games, I don't think it's like this. It's not as popular as we might think it is, within the general gaming sphere.
Yeah, I agree. I will probably pick it up later this year. I officially added to my backlog the other day. I know you'll be happy to hear this after talking to you. I will be playing Bloodborne this year finally.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
We will be talking about these games later in the show, but it is officially on my backlog. I have it scheduled, so I'll probably dive into that. And then based on reactions, Elden Ring, which maybe you can help me with some co-op if I dive into that, because I've heard that the co-op is supposed to be much, much easier than other Souls games. So
100%. And I can help you with co-op on Bloodborne too if you want help. I think I have a character that's in the first new game cycle that I can jump into.
Perfect. I definitely I would feel more comfortable with you kind of riding shotgun with me. Definitely, that's for sure.
Yeah.
You mentioned one of the games that I've been playing. I've been checking out Forbidden West. It's pretty good. It's definitely more Horizon. It's a beautiful game. I tweeted a joke the other day. It said I just renamed it Horizon. Aloy is fed up with everybody's shit because so far 5 to 10 hours in the game, she's just annoyed that people won't let her do what she needs to do. It's like, hey, you're all going to die. So just get out of the way and let me do what I need to do.
There's a little bit of that, right? Like in the first game, Aloy literally saved the world. And now these people are still like, no, like you need to follow our rules or, stuff like that.
Right. And I think that is one of the most interesting dynamics, not to like spoil anything about the game for anybody, just kind of seeing, hey, this person did basically save like all of existence, and to kind of see how she's a reluctant hero and to see her interact with people uncomfortably when they refer to her as like the savior or somebody that basically saved all of existence. So it's interesting to see how she kind of deals with that new level of fame. It's kind of like how, I don't know why my brain makes weird connections to things, but in Super Mario RPG, like that's a game where the world knows like who Mario is. He's like super famous throughout his like adventures. So everyone's always like, oh, stopping Mario. Hey, do a jump. It's kind of like that. Everybody stops Aloy and is like, hey, like, thanks for saving us. And she's like, that's great, but you need to stop talking to me because I have to save you again. So please leave me alone.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that is cool that they do like they have like continuation between the first game and the second one in that way too, where people know who Aloy is. That's cool. I don't feel like a lot of, I don't know. I don't feel like I said, I just got done playing Yakuza Like a Dragon, and I've played all the Yakuza games at this point, and there's still like so many people that like we're on Yakuza 5 and people are like, who's Kiryu, the most famous Yakuza member in the history of the Yakuza? And people are like, no, I think I can take him, so there's
right. He's done so much crazy shit. It's like, why would you even bother trying to mess with him at this point?
So I'm glad that in Forbidden West people are like, they've kind of written in that way where Aloy is now famous and people know who she is. That's cool.
Yeah, it's definitely one of them. At least for me, it's one of my favorite elements of the story so far. I haven't gotten too far in it just because I've been doing podcasts and other stuff. And then I picked up and been playing Sifu. That came out while I was on my honeymoon. And man, that is absolutely brutal how tough that game is. It's a lot of fun. It really fulfills all of your Matrix, John Wick fantasies of just being able to rail down 100 dudes or people in a hallway. It feels absolutely fantastic. Speaking of hallways, one of the earlier levels has like a hallway scene a la how I don't know if did you ever watch
right?
What?
From Old Boy, right?
Well, I was thinking more of how they did the one-shot fight scene in Daredevil where he's in the hallway. I don't know if you saw that from Marvel's Daredevil. And I was
that reminded me of Old Boy when I saw a clip of that. Yeah.
So that's been fun. I haven't been playing that as much as I have been playing Horizon. And then I picked up one other game called Vampire Survivors. You may have seen me post about it. $3 on Steam. And that game is simple, but the most addicting game I've played this year. It's incredible. You're one little dude in the middle of the screen, and there's just waves of monsters spawning in all around you. And you just get power-ups, like you can get a whip, you can get a cross, you can get magic, fireballs, and you're just basically... My friend Shane from Retro Hangover described it the best. It's just like a moving tower defense game where you are the tower and just there's enemies swarming you. And
okay,
it's, man, for $3, it's It's so addictive. It's insane. All of a sudden, I picked it up yesterday. It was 10 o'clock, and the next thing I know, it's 4 p.m. And I was like, been playing this for literally 4 hours or however many hours
Yeah,
that is.
I've heard a lot about that. It seems like not. It's definitely not a genre of game that I generally play. Like I really don't like tower defense, but the way that you
Mhm.
describe it makes it sound like even someone like me who doesn't like tower defense, if I'm the one moving around and attacking stuff, then I can
Mhm.
probably get behind that for sure.
And that's literally the only mechanic is you just move because everything is just auto fire. So you just have to
Oh,
move around
okay.
the map. And
Gotcha.
there's just something about mowing down hundreds of undead that's
Oh,
just
yeah.
carnally satisfying.
So it's
So
like 8-bit Dynasty Warriors or something
yeah,
like that where
essentially, yeah. At first you would think that it's just like a very low res like knockoff Castlevania pack and like whatever game editor creator knockoff thing that you would be making a game on. Uh, but man, it's crazy. I don't know. I'm playing that yesterday and today, and it's for some reason one of my favorite games this year so far. So I mean, if you got $3 lying around, what do you got to lose, right? It's like
exactly. Yeah.
$3, and I
Knowing
don't think that the people that made this game either were expecting this level of just craze around this game right now. It's absolutely unreal.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds cool. Sifu also looks really cool. I'm definitely going to play that sometime. Unfortunately, it came out 2 weeks before Elden Ring or 3 weeks before Elden Ring, so I was like, you got to wait. I can't. I can't.
Hmm.
I just, there is no way. Like, I know it's not a very long game. I probably could beat it before Elden Ring comes out, but I'm just like, no, just focus. Finish Yakuza. That game takes forever. Finish that game.
Based on what I've played of Sifu so far, I think I'm on the third level. It's got a lot of replayability because there's a bunch of different skills to master. There's stuff in different paths through a lot of the levels you can take. So there's definitely a lot of replay value. I read somewhere that it's like an 8 to 10 hour finish if you're first going into it, but it seems to me that there's a lot of replayability there. And both that and Vampire Survivors heavy on the roguelike action. So that's interesting that I, went from playing zero roguelikes to when I played Hades for the first time 2 years ago to all of a sudden now playing more roguelikes than I've ever played in my entire life. So
Right.
it's really interesting to kind of see that genre come into its own, especially after Hades kind of, took over the world there for a little bit.
Yeah, it's starting to creep into like more. I don't know if I want to call Super Giants not AAA, but it's starting to creep into, you know, bigger budget games. So Hades and then Returnal, Sifu, Deathloop. We have all of. I mean, even the big companies are starting to make these now. It's not just like a, indie thing like it felt like it was a couple years ago.
Right. Returnal's also on my list. I missed that one last year. I've heard nothing but good things.
Uh huh.
So I'm
It's
definitely
great.
going to pick that
Yeah.
up. All right, so let's get into the meat and potatoes, shall we? So, Dave, you run a podcast called Tales from the Backlog. Can you give me a little bit of a history about your show, kind of how you came up with it, and kind of what your intentions were starting that show?
Yeah. So I was doing my other podcast, a top three podcast. I started that about a year before Tales from the Backlog started. And so, like, once I got the ropes of, making podcasts and stuff like that, I started to think, like, what I really want to do is talk about video games, because video games are, like, by far my biggest source of entertainment. And I'll play 20 video games for every one movie that I watch. Like, it's that skewed heavily in that direction. So I started to think, like, I want to make a podcast about video games. And it's actually I'm on a Slack channel for the Duckfeed .tv podcast network. That's Watch Out for Fireballs, Bonfireside Chat, and those shows. And I was talking with one of the guys, one of the hosts of the show, and people were having a bunch of opinions about a game that was, on one of those shows. And I can't remember what game it was. But he was like, "Hey, you guys have so many opinions. You can make your own podcast." And I was like, he's right. I can.
We
and
can
so
do
I
that.
did. Yeah. So I was like, I should start my own games podcast. And so that's where it started. I kind of like mishmashed a few of my favorite podcasts together, and that's why my show is so focused on one game per episode.
Mhm.
And like kind of walking through the mechanics, the story, visuals and music basically, but like really focusing on mechanics because that's what I liked hearing other people talk about. And then yeah, and from the very beginning I knew that I wanted to do my show spoiler free at the beginning, the way that how I do it, so that people who haven't played that particular game, if you're curious, you can listen to my show, find out what the game's all about, and then at the end we have a spoiler section where we talk about anything we want to. But I wanted to make a show for people who can, so people can listen to it without having played that game. You can, if you haven't played Disco Elysium, that's a game you don't want to be spoiled on. So like when I was like, I want to play Disco Elysium, all these podcasts are talking about it, but I can't listen to them talk about it. So that's why I decided to make my show that way. So my show started in October 2021. By the time people hear this episode, we'll probably be at about episode 20 plus a couple of bonus ones that I've put out. And it's going real strong. So that's what my show is. It's each episode a deep dive on one game with no spoilers for a while. And then we'll warn you when it's spoiler time. And it's a good time. I've had a great time. Every episode is me plus one other guest. So I'm the only permanent member of the show. Eric, you recorded an episode with me that'll be releasing in March. So people can look forward to that about Metroid Dread. That was a good conversation. But I have a rotating, so I've had 20 episodes released by this point, and I would say it's with, 15 different guests at this point. So I really have a diverse group of guests that come on my show, and that's been really good. I like talking to a different person each time, even though I may be sacrificing a little bit of, chemistry that co-hosts can build up as you go, of course, but it is cool to talk to a different person every episode.
Yeah, I think that's really great too. And it really gives you, that's been one of my favorite things doing like the podcast and doing the show is just, when I started side questing podcasts, I had like a preconceived notion of what I thought video games were. But just over a year of doing that show and starting this show and having talked and met people, like you and so many of our friends, that I really realized I really didn't know anything, and I got to experience so many more different kinds of opinions. And I think that's definitely a great strength of your show. It seems like every week when you have a different voice on, the people get to know you, and like I know your opinions and thoughts very well. But just to kind of see you be able to play off the difference of opinions that people bring to the show too, I think that's really fantastic. And I have to thank you too for the spoiler wall section, because that I think that's ingenious, and that's nothing. I mean, I listen to a lot of podcasts throughout the week, and I don't really ever hear another show that has like a very distinct. It's like, okay, like this is a half the show you can listen to. Don't go past here if you don't want it spoiled. It saved me from. And I've done that for a few of your like your shows. Like Firewatch came to mind, and when you did the Firewatch, I think you had that, and I was able to listen and get the lay of the land of that game and not go past that, because I want to go and play that game now. I want to experience it. So that's really great. And you said that you've almost done about 20 episodes now, and it'll be about 20 when this is going to come out next week, I think, not to date the episode.
Right.
So in those 20 episodes, is there kind of anything you've learned about the types of games you like or dislike? Is there anything you've kind of learned about your tastes in general?
I would say in the first 20 or so episodes, I've recorded maybe 30 episodes, and I record months and months ahead because I'm a neurotic mess if deadlines start getting close. So in the first like 20 episodes or so, it was mostly like I was playing the games that either like I had played very recently and I just did a quick episode about it, or games that like, I was going to play this anyway, and because I knew I would enjoy it, and now I'm going to make a podcast episode about it. It's why in the first 20 or so episodes, I don't have any episodes where I play a game that I didn't like. So that's kind of something I noticed now as I'm going forward, and I'm now choosing games to play, mostly still based on like what I would be playing anyway, Elden Ring and stuff like that. But I'm
Mhm.
also like peppering in games where I'm like, okay, I didn't like the Outer Wilds the first time I played it, but I want to play it again, and I want to do a podcast episode. I'll see if I like it more this time, and if I don't, I want to bring on somebody else and bounce off ideas and stuff like that. So that has kind of changed as the show is going. I'm starting to choose games mostly still based on what I want to play, but also because now I have this opportunity to have a conversation with somebody, perhaps about a game that I don't like or a game that I wouldn't normally play. Yeah, it's starting to come up like that. So that's kind of been changing, and so that's kind of taught me a little bit about my behavior as a gamer and like the types of games that I would consume. Because if I wasn't going to talk to anybody about the Outer Wilds, then I would probably not revisit that. I would just kind of leave that and say like, okay, I don't like this game that everybody else likes. That's just going to be, part of my gaming history now. Now I have a better excuse to revisit it and stuff like that. So yeah.
That's super interesting because I wouldn't say that there's a lot of people out there, and me included in one of them, is if I played something and didn't like it, I normally wouldn't go back to it.
Right,
So
same.
it's interesting that you can go back to that with that kind of different perspective and just kind of really give it like a critical kind of once over, especially if you like have a person on and say like you didn't like the game and they did, you can kind of hash it out and see, kind of where the middle ground is. And
Right.
that's super interesting. Now that's got me thinking about like all the games that I played and didn't like, and ooh, man, that's tantalizing. So is there anything you've obviously, played 20 shows worth of games, and you said you've recorded 30 and are obviously still playing more. Is there anything that's kind of surprised you? Is there anything that you played that you expected to like and didn't like, or vice versa? Did you go into something expecting to hate it and you actually liked it? Have you ever had an experience on the show where you like went to play something and like your initial opinion or thoughts going in drastically changed by the end of it?
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely not. Again, like most of the games that I pick are things that I already know that I'm probably going to like it. And so there's a couple though. There's a couple that I was very like worried about, like this is not the type of game that I normally like. So coming in March, maybe by the time someone listens to this, there'll be an episode of my show released about Kingsfield 4, which is a PlayStation 2 game made by From Software. This was From Software before Demon's Souls. And if people have listened to me talk before, I don't like a lot of older games. I don't think that they're very fun. I don't think a lot of them hold up as well as your memory tells you that you think they do, So I was worried because I was like, a PS2 game, I'm not sure I'm going to like this. And I really, really loved it. Like, really loved it. So that was surprising. And the prospect of doing a podcast episode has also made me kind of push through some games that I would have given up on if it weren't for like the idea of talking to someone about it on the show. So like Earthbound is one I recorded. It's going to be out I think in April. I recorded Earthbound with Keith from the Main Quest. That is a game that if I did not have the promise of talking to Keith about it, which I was excited about, I probably wouldn't have finished Earthbound. But I'm glad I did, because after I pushed through, I got to see some stuff that's really, really, really good that I really love now. And so I'm thankful for like the podcast for helping me push through that, because I would have given up about 3 or 4 hours into the game, and then I didn't. And I'm, like I said, thankful that I pushed through.
So, and that's something we've talked about too, is kind of, you tend to stay in kind of the more modern era of gaming when it comes to picking and choosing games. Do you have kind of a specific like not like a line in the sand, but for lack of a better term, a line in the sand is kind of past this year, things kind of start to get a little gray for you? Is there, or is this really kind of based on personal tastes?
It's there's not a line. There's definitely not a line because especially with older games, there are some genres that I think hold up better than others. You know, like I can go back and play an old an old JRPG, and I think other than grinding and stuff, which sucks. Other than that, I think a lot of that has held up well. It's like more action games from back in the day that I don't think are very fun anymore compared to some newer stuff. But like, I guess if you look at the list of the games I play, it's like super heavily skewed into like PS4, Switch, and newer.
Well, that's what a lot of people are looking for now is what is more currently like there is the retro community out there, but there's a lot more people looking for what's happened recently. And I do share some of your opinions. There is some stuff from back in the day that definitely has not aged super well. There's some stuff that you just even I had this experience on when I did Retro Hangover with Chris and Shane. Man, I'm giving them free airtime this episode. I did an episode on Crash Bandicoot with them, and I had Crash Bandicoot was a big part of my childhood. And I had really, really great memories, and this was really the first time I'd gone back. Except for like the new HD remake, I went back and played the original game, and I was like, man, this is. I think, yeah, I think Crash is important historically for what it did, but it's not as fun or easy to play as I certainly remembered, and I think the part that fascinates me about that era of gaming is. Just kind of the way they were trying to figure stuff out and do stuff back then. They were literally making it up as they went along to put some of these games out. One guy was like, hey, we can't fit these last 5 songs on this cartridge. And the guy's like, well, just, pop the cartridge in the toaster for a minute and just that'll give us extra like 5 kilobytes of space to put the song on or whatever. And they were just doing crazy shit like that. So that's interesting. Would you ever take the show in a more would you maybe go back and play some older stuff if you found people to talk about it on the show? Or
oh yeah, like I have, like I said, I did an episode on Earthbound. I have a couple like things that I want to play, older things like Final Fantasy VI is something that I'm scared to revisit, but I am going to revisit because it's one of my favorite games ever, and like I don't know. I kind of, there's been a couple games that I really loved as a kid that I went back and played again, and I was like, this sucks. And it now sucks that my memories are tainted.
My childhood was awful. It's terrible.
Yeah. So, but like, I'm not a modern games podcast by design. It's just that's the type of game that I generally enjoy. So like, if there is a retro game that someone wants to talk about and I also want to play it, yeah, sure. Let's do it. But just like the type of stuff that I normally like, the type of stuff that I normally play, it's definitely skewed toward more recent stuff. And like the way that I play and record and schedule my episodes means that I'm never going to be on the cutting edge of like that first week, review scene. I'm never going to be there. Like I'm recording an episode about Pokemon Legends Arceus. By the time that episode airs, that game's going to be 4 months old. And I bought that on release, played it really quickly. And just the way that my show works, I'm never going to be in that. So I'm not, by design, I'm not focused on what's happening now. It's just, those are the kind of games that I tend to play the most.
Well, I think that's interesting too, because I, for one, and this is a problem I have with modern game review in general, is I truly think that you can like spend a couple days or a week with the game and kind of just chug it down. Let's say play 10 hours a day for 5 days straight and get your review out or whatever you want to do. I think that can skew the way that you review a game or talk about it, especially if it's brand new. Because if there's some experience where I played something for like 10 hours a day for like 5 days a week back in my younger days, and I just like got so burnt out on it in a week, I was like, oh, this game wasn't that great. I think that letting it marinate and going back to talk about something like Legends Arceus, for example, 4 months later, I think that's a great way to do it, because I think you have to let a game age a little bit, kind of like wine, before you can fully digests like what it is and what it means. That's just kind of what I appreciate that you kind of take that approach with it. I think that's a much better way to do it, so you can have a full, complete picture of the game, especially if the game launches in a broken, messy state and they spend 2 years fixing it. Not going to name drop anybody, but
Yeah, man. Like another thing, like you and I, we schedule podcasts. Sometimes we talk about specific games. Like when I remember you did your close look at Advance Wars on side questing, right? And,
I did do that.
Yeah. So like you and I, we schedule things. And so by scheduling episodes like that, we give ourselves deadlines. And anytime a deadline is introduced, especially when you're playing a game, it does kind of like creep into your head as you're playing, and you may not let it soak and let it marinate. Maybe Advance Wars isn't a great example because you sound like you've been playing Advance Wars your whole life. So, but
it's been a long time.
Yeah.
Now I feel old.
But like, if I were to give myself a deadline and say like, I'm recording about Legends Arceus next week, I have to finish it by next week. I'm going to rush through it. And it really takes there are people who do this really well, but it takes a very like professional and very good reviewer, analyzer to like not let a deadline affect the way that you are perceiving and critiquing a game that you're playing. It takes someone really special to do that. And I'm not going to call out anybody who I don't think does that well. I think there are a lot of people who do it really well, but it is a struggle.
I had an experience like that when was it 3 years ago now, that when Kingdom Hearts 3 came out, and any longtime listener to the show knows that for better or worse, I love that game for some reasons that I can't explain. So when that game came out, I beat it in like 3 days. I plowed through it. It's like a 50-hour JRPG. I beat it in 3 days, and I just plowed through it. I was like, this is the greatest game of all time. Like, I cried when the credits rolled on that game, and now that I've been able to like sit and marinate on it for 3 years, I still love it. It's emotionally, it's a very important game to me, but I've been able to look at it more critically. So that be a warning. Don't let your passions get in the way of being smart about what you say, for sure. So going forward, and I know you said you've only got 20 episodes, but you're going strong and you've got a lot more. And I'm hoping that you'll be around for a long time, because you're part of my weekly my weekly routine now. It's like whenever your shows come out, which I think you're on Wednesday now. It's just, it's the first thing I do when I get up, so I turn your show on, and
thanks, man.
It's company while I get ready. So in a weird way, you're like making breakfast with me and doing all this stuff with me in the morning.
Takes you 2.5 to 3.5 hours to get ready every morning listening to my episodes.
Yeah, exactly. And my boss is like, why are you late so much? It's like, well, I can't come in until I finish listening to Dave. So like, sorry, this isn't going to work.
This Darkest Dungeon episode's 3 hours. Work has to wait.
Right. I normally listen to people on Spotify on 1.2 speed, because I just feel like when you listen to people at 1.2 speed, it feels like everybody's just had like one more cup of coffee than they should have. And it's really energetic listening to people like that. So, and I can listen to more friends' shows if I'm running a little short on time that week. But 20 episodes in, do you have any plans for the future of the show? Just kind of keep doing what you're doing. I know we were talking a little bit about different ideas, but
yeah,
not to put you on the spot.
Yeah, my issue now is that now that I have the flow of the show and I know exactly what each episode is, I know, I have a big list of games that I want to talk about and play in the future, and I'm feeling good about it. My issue now is that I have too many people that I want to talk to and too many games that I know I want to play. And so I have to stop myself from matching people to games too far into the future, So like you and I talked about a game that we want to talk about in the future on my show. But then we were like, okay, but it's not going to be for several months. And I kind of like, it's cool that we have this, written in pencil promise to do it, but I also kind of feel bad doing that. I would like to make things more concrete and more, in the near future, So that's something that like in the future, I need to kind of keep working on, like what I schedule things out a month or maybe 2 months in advance, but like anything beyond that, there's so many unknown things. I don't really want to keep doing that. So that's something I've learned, and that will kind of dictate how I handle the rest of the show. The other thing I've been like kicking around is that at a certain point in time, it's just not going to be possible for me to play and beat 4 to 5 games a month. You know, like right now I have an
That's a lot.
unprecedented amount of free time, and that amount of free time is not going to be in my life forever. So I've been kicking around like what's something I could do once a month or twice a month to keep putting out shows, because I like doing the shows, but like how can I kind of lessen the load of games to play on myself? And a lot of the really popular gaming shows that do one game per episode, they have stuff like this too that they've figured out. I need to figure out what works for me that way. So, I mean, you and I brainstormed a couple of ideas. I'm still, then I looked at my schedule and I was like, well, I have enough games for the next several months. I'll be okay for now, but I need to, figure this out at some point.
I wanted to pitch this idea to you on the show because I
Okay.
thought of it. I thought of it literally today. So
Okay,
what
cool.
we could do is we can incorporate Tales from the Backlog, right? And then we could just get people to franchise it out, and then we could just start
okay.
a Tales from the Backlog franchise in like every city, and then you'll have no shortage of content because you'll just have people doing it for you, and then you just collect the franchise fees and get rich, and then
Yeah.
basically printing money.
Capitalism, baby.
So-
Let's do it.
I think we just won. I think that's the secret, right? Is
Yeah.
to literally just have all the money and then you win. So, no, that's exciting. And obviously I'll be here. And then whenever you want to do new things, just let me know. If you have a crazy idea, be like, hey, I'm going to start doing this. I'll be like, hey, come on the show and talk about it, promote it,
Yeah.
whatever you want to do.
Yeah, for sure. The
I
other
want
thing
to
is
touch
like,
base.
the other thing is like, I have a Discord server that I've had running for over a year now, but I only use it for recording. And I've been thinking about like, do I want to kind of start up a community for Tales from the Backlog and my other show, a Top 3 podcast? Do I want to have some kind of community aspect? Because it would be cool to incorporate some kind of listener feedback in Tales from the Backlog, listener reviews for the game that I'm talking about at that time or something like that. That could be kind of cool. But I'm still kind of figuring that stuff out as I go. I want to make sure that the show, the format of the show and everything like that was nailed down before I start getting into, extraneous things like Discord servers and stuff like that.
Right. Well, based on my experience in the innumerable Discord servers that I've joined since starting the podcast, giving people a space to fight about things that they love is always a good thing. So,
Yeah.
And then you just come in and you comment, you kind of stir the pot a little and just kind of see what happens. So you just sit back and it provides hours of entertainment. So if you do that, definitely let me know. I will jump in and be sure to throw around some opinions and get some people fighting. Not
Cool,
to cause unruly mayhem in your Discord, your imaginary Discord server, but yeah. So you also have, like you've mentioned a couple of times, I just want to touch briefly on your other show, a Top 3 podcast. Just tell me a little bit about that, what you guys do there.
Yeah, so my 3 best friends from high school and I have been doing top 3 lists for like, I don't know, 15 plus years now at this point. Just whenever we're hanging around, maybe a little intoxicated in some form or another, hey dude, give me your top 3, DC superheroes, and then we'll like argue about that. And so when the pandemic hit, everyone kind of like had this, not everyone, but a lot of people had this awakening to like digital forms of communication where like when I was, first getting introduced to it, it was like, okay, you can use Skype or not talk to people digitally. But then like we kind of realized like, oh, we can just all hop in this Discord thing and chat, or we can play Jackbox Party Pack together online. And so we kind of like started hanging out a little bit more online. And these friends and I, we've been in a group text for years and years and years. But like, so we started to think like, hey, we should make a podcast just like everybody else who decided to make a podcast in the middle of, or the early years of the pandemic.
Yup.
I mean, I'm not sure about you, like side questing started during the pandemic, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It was, well, Tom and I, that was Tom and I's second podcast, the first podcast we started a few years ago, but it just kind of just kind of fell apart. And as much as I've tried to take those down, those are still online and they're really, really bad. So I'll never let anybody find those ever.
Okay. Yeah, so like we saw a couple of our friends from high school started podcasts, and we were like, hey, let's do a podcast where we just do top threes, and this will give us a chance to kind of hang out with each other a little bit more and do something creative. I didn't know anything about making podcasts, but I just kind of assumed the, you know, host duties, the editing. I learned how to edit audio and stuff like that. And it just started as like, hey, like, let's hang out, let's do top threes like we used to, but let's record it because we think it's pretty funny, and so we decided to release it as a podcast. So that's a top three podcast. We just do top threes, top three foods at the fair, top three N64 games. We talk about video games sometimes, but not all the time.
One of the things listening to that show that amazes me, and I've told you this before listening to it, is that no matter what your guys' topic is, it could be about literally anything. It could be Seinfeld episodes or Beatles songs or whatever. Just the wealth of knowledge between all of you is amazing, to not only be able to make lists every week and come up with new topics, but to also be able to intelligently talk about literally every iteration of lists. That's impressive, because I struggle to sit up here and talk about video games, a thing that I think I know about, but the more I listen to podcasts, I realize that I actually know nothing about. Mm-hmm. So that's really impressive, you and all of your friends, and that's cool. I didn't really know the origin story behind that, so that's really cool. And I would never think to like make lists with my friends is something to do the past time, but that's actually super. Just hearing you guys like talk and how funny all those episodes are.
It's a total stoner activity to just sit around and list stuff. So like that's kind of the genesis of it. But yeah, that like, I don't know. I mean, we've all been best friends for at least like, coming on around like 20 years now. So like we have so much comfort talking to each other, talking about stuff. And I think that's where a lot of like, we're not always having super intellectual conversations, but we are like very, very comfortable saying what we think with this group of people, because we've been best friends for so long. And like, even when I do Tales from the Backlog and I have a total stranger come on my show, I'm not as comfortable saying exactly what I think as I am on top three, because it's with my best friends. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think that's where some of that, like, it may seem like we're, very deep in conversation. We do sometimes, but the rest of it, I think, is really just because we've been doing this for so long. We're so used to this.
That's fantastic. I love, and this was what I really hoped coming from this show, is to kind of get these origin stories or whatever, just the stories behind why people do what they do and do what they love. So that's really interesting, and thank you for sharing that with me. To the second portion of the show now, and this is what everybody's favorite part is. It's the part where I ask you to talk about yourself, which is something that everybody loves to do.
As if I haven't been already doing that this entire time.
Exactly. So Dave, I want to know a little bit about you. I want to know where your gaming journey began and kind of what games have meant to you in your life. And it's open-ended, so you can go in any direction you want with that question. You can tell me any story, whatever you want to do.
Okay, so my first gaming thing I got was a Game Gear, and I was young enough that I don't remember how old I was, like
the good old days.
Portion of early childhood just kind of blends together into a mess of memories, but I definitely had a Game Gear. I played the shit out of this Power Rangers game on the Game
Hell
Gear
yeah.
because I was that'll date how old I was a little bit because Power Rangers was my favorite thing at the time. So I had a Game Gear, and then, but it wasn't like I was maybe too young to make this kind of decision, but it wasn't like this is my thing now. I play video games. It wasn't like that. It was just like I play Power Rangers a little bit each day or when we're in the car or something like that. And but I played outside most of the time when I was, a kid with the kids in my neighborhood. And I guess it wasn't really until I got Pokemon where I was like Pokemon Red, where I was like fully like, oh, okay, like I'm not going to go outside anymore. I'm going to play this forever. And so I think like Pokemon was the thing that for Christmas in like 98, I think my brother and I both got Game Boy Pockets and each version of Pokemon Red and Blue.
Pocket, dude.
Yeah. And yeah, that was it. Like I had gone over to friends' houses and played their Super Nintendos and stuff, but I never asked my parents for a Super Nintendo or like a Sega, whatever was out at the time, or I never asked my parents for the original Game Boy. I don't even know if I asked my parents for Pokemon. I just got it.
Like, hey, this thing's popular right now. Just take it. There you go.
I think it was one of those things where like my parents were in tune with what the kids really liked that Christmas season. And they were like, this is a slam dunk Christmas gift. Every kid, if these kids don't like Pokemon, we're just going to like, send them out in the woods and let them live out the rest of their lives out there. So I think Pokemon's like the real genesis.
I think it was for a lot of people. And that's, we must be similar. Not that we have to age ourselves here, but we must be around similar age because I was very much too into the same thing. Like Power Rangers for a while was my life there. Power Rangers and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and and then when Pokemon came around, that was that's still to this day like some of my most like clear memories of childhood is around that because like you said that was a global event. Like that was the thing. That was the thing that everybody was doing. The shows, the games, the cards, everything. Mm-hmm. And so I remember that very, very clearly.
I have a memory of Pokemon like because it came out during I got it for Christmas and I played it like until we went back to school. But I was so like new to video games. I didn't know how to save. I didn't know you could save. So even though it's in the menu, there's a button in the menu that says save. I knew how to access my Pokemon, which is also in the menu, but I didn't. The idea that you could save this game didn't become clear to me. So I played up until Mount Moon like 30 times over Christmas break, and then my parents were like, "Okay, Dave, time to go to bed," and I would just shut it off because I didn't know you could save. And then I got to school, and all the kids were showing me all the cool stuff they had, and I was like, how did you get that far in the game? Like, do you just play all the time? And they're like, no, you idiot, you can save. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Now I know what to do.
That's really funny. I remember having clear memories too because that's funny. Pokemon was one of my first experiences like the quote unquote RPG, or I guess Pokemon would be like a light RPG because it's the very basic of what you consider an RPG. And I knew you could save, but forever I couldn't get out of Pallet Town because I didn't know how to. I would just walk around that square and go in people's houses for maybe like a couple hours. And I was like, this is what everybody's so excited about? Like, like what is this? I don't know. And my friend's like, no, you're supposed to go in the grass. And I'm like, I didn't think I could go in the grass till, they told me I could because it was supposed to be dangerous. So I didn't go in the grass because I was afraid to. So I just spent maybe like 3 hours in Pallet Town. And
Mom said, don't go in the grass. So I didn't go in the grass.
Right.
Like, what's the
I didn't
problem?
even talk to any of the people because she said not to talk to strangers. So like, no, I'm not going to talk to an old man that comes and wants to give me a ball with a monster in it. Like, no, why would I do that? So that's great. So you mentioned back at the top of the show that video games are currently your preferred form of media consumption, I guess to use a corporatized word. So what is it about that make you prefer them to like binging a show or watching a movie or things like that?
A couple things. Number one, I was diagnosed with ADD when I was a kid. I've always had trouble paying attention to stuff. They told me in high school that it had like gone away or something, and like I did fine in school, so I was just like, okay, cool. I don't have to take medicine anymore. That's good. But now as an adult, I've noticed myself like really struggling to pay attention at times. And I don't take medicine because I don't live in a country that values mental health, which is not the United States, another country that doesn't value mental health. So I've just been kind of reticent to go get checked and stuff. A little personal, but still. Video games hold my attention. That's why I can play 55 hours of Yakuza and remember so much about it and have such a connection to it. And if I watch something on TV, I am on my phone the entire time because I just can't stay focused. And maybe that's on me for not getting my shit checked out. Sorry for cursing if that's not the vibe of this show.
Hey, you can say whatever you want.
Okay. Maybe that's on me for not getting it checked out and getting it corrected. And I will at some point when I'm, ready to. But like video games hold my attention. So that's number one. It's actually one of the things where I will say like, this movie is definitively great because I didn't look at my phone the whole time. It held my attention the entire time. It's why probably pandemic related, I don't watch a lot of movies because I don't go to the movie theater, which is where you are forced to pay attention to a movie, So anyway, games hold my attention better than everything else, but it's the interactivity of games that makes you connect with it. And I was talking about this on a recording I did yesterday. For me, the way that I enjoy entertainment, an average video game will connect with me in a way that's much closer to my heart than a good TV show will or a good movie, Like, yeah, I'm trying to, like, the story I've been talking about Yakuza, so I'll just keep saying those. Those are good video games with, if they took a Yakuza story and made it into a Netflix show, it would be fine, The reason I like Yakuza is because I like the main character and I like the weird situations that they get into. And then the main stories are these, over the top crime drama things. If that was a TV show, I would not like it a whole lot. But as a game with all this interactivity, it helps me connect with it, so well that I actually really do love a couple of the stories in the Yakuza games. And I think it's because I was connected due to that interactivity of it. I think that's the main thing that keeps me going in games. But I also, like, what I really like about a lot of games is exploring and learning about backstory, like finding things, trying to figure out what's going on. And that's not something that movies or TV or something like that can give you. That's a video game thing.
I would agree with all that. And I for me, there have been shows and movies that I've watched that I think are really great, and shows and movies that I've watched that, have really connected with me on an emotional level. But it, like you said, it's not the same when you have a game, and it's the ability of any video game that's put out to connect with any person, really. So any game that you talk about could be anybody's favorite game for whatever reasons, because you form an emotional connection to the game because it's so interactive. You actually feel like you're experiencing it as opposed to like watching something happen to, to somebody else, which is the way I feel most times when I'm watching a show or a movie. It's like, hey, like this isn't, happening to me. I'm watching it happen to somebody else. But even when you're playing like a game with a character who's like the main character of the story, you still feel the connection because you've led the character through all that steps of that character's journey. Right. And it allows us to really, and that's why I try to, on my show, especially, if there's a game that I don't like I will say like I don't like it, I didn't enjoy it, but I try not to savagely trash any game that I talk about, just because I don't know if that game could be somebody's favorite game for emotional reasons. And that's really one of the things that I love about video games, and one of the things I wanted to explore with this show. And is, for better or worse, the reason one of my favorite games is a game where Donald Duck is a wizard. So
Right.
it's because of that emotional connection.
Yeah. You kind of unlocked a comparison. And so like this may sound sacrilegious to some people listening. I'm aware of that, but this is how my enjoyment of video games goes. Okay, so I really love the show The Wire. It's one of my favorite shows ever made. It's an incredible show. It's an incredible piece of film, storytelling and stuff like that. I love that show. I think it's amazing. I like the experience of playing Final Fantasy X more than I like The Wire. And I'm not going to say that Final Fantasy X is a better piece of media than The Wire, but video games just connect to me more than something on TV. There's a detachment watching something on TV that video games, frankly, I never feel detached from a good video game, And it's because of what you said. You feel like you're taking part in what's happening in a video game, whereas in a movie or a TV show, you're watching what's happening.
So much of modern TV, and I'm just now kind of starting to think about the shows I've watched over the last several years, which have just been kind of the popular shows of the time, right? It's been like Game of Thrones and Breaking Bad and Ozark and these shows like this. A lot of what I'm coming to realize now is what a lot of these shows have is they bring that shock value, whether it's like these gruesome deaths or people dying that you didn't expect. It's really kind of trying to like subvert your expectations is kind of what I get from TV. And I've been realizing as I've been talking to you now, it's like, that's what I look for in TV is I look for like I look for like surprise and shock more than I look for like emotional connections, because I get that from playing games, and in TV I'm just looking for like a momentary like surprise or something, which is interesting because I don't necessarily like scary movies or stuff that's designed to do that. So that was just me rambling and kind of becoming enlightened as I'm talking to you.
I'm the same way, and if you want to kind of like chart this and chart like your connection and emotional involvement in what's happening in a piece of media, all those shows that you named, those are shows that like would hit that level. Game of Thrones, aside from the last season, which has just tarnished everything. Ozark is a show that I think is really great. I stopped watching it in the middle of season 2 for no reason, even though I was really enjoying it.
So my wife and I did too, and we're trying to rewatch it right now. So
yeah, it's good. And I stopped watching it. I guess I can just say that. Like, if I say that a game is really good, I will finish it. And I think Ozark is a great show, and I just stopped watching for no reason.
Right. And I'm the same way too. I won't leave a good game unfinished. So yeah, that's interesting. And I had another point, but I forgot what I was going to say now because I just have like a million thoughts running through my head. So the only thing, more just kind of waxing nostalgic about things like this. The only thing recently I kind of felt I had an emotional connection to was when I went to see Avengers Endgame when it came out. And that's its own thing. And thinking about now, so 2019 was a big year because it was the end of several things that I'd been following for a long time. So Kingdom Hearts 3 came out, and that wrapped up those series of games. Then 3 months later, Avengers Endgame came out, and I had gone and seen every single one of those movies with my friends the day they came out. And then the next month was the last season of Game of Thrones, which I've been watching with my dad for like 10 years almost. And so I suppose I don't have to worry about like spoiling Avengers at this point, right? I'm sure like everyone's seen it. Okay. So at the end, like when Tony Stark dies, like I was genuinely like in tears, and it wasn't because I was like sad that he died. I was just like, wow, this is like the end of like something that I've done with my friends for like 10 years now.
Yeah.
I don't even know where I'm going with this point.
You watched 20 plus movies leading up to that moment, and so all of those memories associated with following this MCU like thing is coming to an end right now, and that definitely I got emotional in that moment too. And it happened it's happened a lot recently as a bunch of movies like from popular franchises, including Marvel, start to go to callbacks and they start to try to hit that nostalgia button. So like there's that new Spider-Man movie, No Way Home, I think it was. Did you see that?
Yeah, and I think we talked about it a little bit too,
Yeah.
didn't we? I think we did.
Yeah. I thought that movie sucked, but I cried at the end because they hit this nostalgia button really, really well. Same with Star Wars Episode 9, which I think is a terrible fucking movie, but I cried at the end because I've been following Star Wars my entire life, and this was the end of a chapter. Even though I hate the way it ended, they're still hitting that button. So the MCU did that. And I'm sure that plays into part of like why Kingdom Hearts 3 resonated with you so much, because it sounds like that also has been a lifelong thing for you, right?
It was, yeah. I mean, that game came out in 2001, and I've been playing it pretty religiously. I play at least one or two of the titles once a year.
Right.
So, man, are you taking over my show right now? It's kind of what it feels like. Just come in and take over.
Just trying to involve you in the conversation too. Like this is something that affects you too.
Right. Dave's like, look at me. I'm the captain now.
Yeah.
I'm running the interview now.
Yeah.
But yeah. So that was really, but it wasn't because like I will say this. I do have kind of a man crush on Robert Downey Jr. So to see him like die was kind of sad, but I didn't have like a high emotional connection to all these things. I had more of an emotional connection to like the memories of watching them, like watching Game of Thrones with my dad or watching all these movies with my friends. Right. It wasn't so much the, I experienced this story like alongside this character, that sort of thing, which is the thing I get from video games is the point, I guess, we were trying to make through this whole thing, I guess.
Well, a lot of video games are like, to keep in mind, like the average open world game takes as much time as watching all of Breaking Bad, Yeah,
that's true.
You are, with a lot of these games, and I'll use Yakuza again, because Yakuza Like a Dragon took me 55 hours to beat. And so I had a long time to make emotional connections with the characters in that game. And so when that game ended and it has a pretty emotional ending to it, I got emotional watching it because I'd spent so much time with those characters. And even I'm doing air quotes here, short video game is, 10 hours long, 20 hours long. I still consider that to be a pretty reasonably length for a pretty reasonable length for a video game. You're still spending a long time, longer than any movie would ask you to spend with a set of characters.
You really would, and that Breaking Bad specifically, I think, is 5 seasons, like, is roughly like 56 hours of television, roughly.
Right.
If I'm rounding each episode to about an hour. So yeah, like you spent the equivalent of Breaking Bad playing Yakuza. So, I mean...
Just one Yakuza. I've played 8 Yakuza games.
Right, this is just one, right.
Yeah, that's just one game.
Some of the games get even more crazy. Like, it takes... I mean, if you want to experience a good amount of Assassin's Creed Odyssey, that's like 100 hours. Right. I know Persona 5 is like at least 100 hours if you want to get everything out of that game.
The one that comes to mind is so many people have intense emotional connections to Final Fantasy 14, and... I have no doubt that game is good, but it also takes like 300 hours to play the entire story. So like, yeah, you should have an emotional connection to the ending of that. That's a long time to spend with these characters.
I want to know if I can, and I think you said this too. I saw on your tweet where you said, I would like to play this as like not a bunny person.
Yeah.
Was that, or is that someone else's? Yeah.
No, that's definitely me. Yeah.
You feel a little strange, but it is what it is. So I want to shift to my next question here, and
okay.
I'm excited to hear you talk about this. So it's no secret you have love for the Soulsborne games from Fromsoft. What have those games meant to you? What is it about the Soulsborne series or the Soulsborne games or just From Software games in general, if you want to make that broad of a generalization, that make them really alluring to you and make you love them so much?
Okay, so... I think I said this in my Dark Souls episode, but I played a lot of Skyrim when Skyrim came out. Skyrim and Dark Souls came out in the same year, and I think I played Dark Souls the year after.
Wow, they really did. Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy to think about. Wow.
Yeah. So when Dark Souls came out, I didn't play it because I was playing Skyrim. And then when I played Dark Souls, I instantly lost the desire to ever play Skyrim again. And um, so, like, just a little background for everybody. I've played all of the Dark Souls games, the Demon Souls remake, because I never had a PS3. I've played them all multiple times. Bloodborne also. Bloodborne's I think it's my favorite game, like, ever. It's just, I could talk. I say I could talk, and I did talk for hours and hours about Bloodborne on my show coming in April, everybody.
Oh, yes. Mark your calendars.
So, yeah. So a couple things that I think make these games really special. Number one, they're the most engaging as far as gameplay goes. For me personally, the kind of thing that I guess I value. It's kind of taught me what I value in games. Like, I really value how every encounter in the game, combat, takes your full attention. And something I think Dark Souls doesn't get enough credit for is I think that exploring the world of Dark Souls, Bloodborne also, finding items, treasures, finding little bits of story, it is some of the best exploration that any game can offer. And if you value exploring in games, they're not open world until Elden Ring. It's not like you can just like go anywhere you want. You're following a very precise path most of the time, but just exploring these levels and finding out like what's here, who is here, what's the story behind this place. Finding out all of that stuff is incredibly engaging. I know like the bosses get a lot of credit and like that feeling of, fight the boss, die, fight again, do a little bit better, but still die. And you gradually learn the boss. And you have this like amazing moment when you finally beat a boss that you've been like banging your head up against for a long time. And I get all of that. I talk about the bosses on my show too, but that's not the thing that I like look forward to in a new game. Like I said, as we're recording, Elden Ring releases in 21 hours and 30 minutes now or whatever. I'm so excited about exploring the world that they make because From Software does exploration better than most other developers, I think. That's what's really special to me is like just how fun it is to go through these levels and explore. Yeah.
I wanted to get your take on this because you've spent so much time with these games. They're just games that I've never had the experience of getting to play. I just never went out of my way to play them. I don't have anything against them. I just never went out of my way to play them. So I always knew in the back of my mind that there was more to these games than just, people saying that they were hard or like, oh, the boss fights are great or that feeling of elation you get when you conquer a boss. One thing I know that the Soulsborne games are famous for is when you're dropped into this world, there's not too much. I mean, I've heard you talk about before, like there are like lore videos on YouTube that you can go and watch to like find out like what the full story is and what actually is going on, because you actually have to look for the story in those games because it's not explicitly spelled out like what exactly is going on based on my understanding.
Yeah.
So do you think, just thinking about like you said, the joy of it is the exploration part of it, do you think that the way that they decided to tell that story enhances like the explorations? It's not something that I think burdens a lot of open world games or games where they try to make exploration a focal point, is that they stop you like every 5 minutes to beat you over the head with like exposition or something. So yeah, if that question makes sense.
Yeah, maybe part of the reason that makes the games so engaging is that you don't have cutscenes, basically. Like the first Dark Souls game has like 3 cutscenes in the whole game. There's one at the beginning, there's like a couple in the middle, and there's one at the end. And they're very short. It's not someone sitting you down and telling you the story for 5 minutes. So I think that helps with engagement. However, it also means that like I don't pick up the story by myself. I kind of go through, because what they do, if you haven't played, is they hide the story in item descriptions and NPC dialogue that's kind of cryptic. And so it's a puzzle to put together. You have to read the item descriptions to get the story. And I don't do that. So like, but they're really good at environmental storytelling too. And like, So those lore videos help me out a lot. So I think it's effective for this kind of game because another thing that I like about them is they all feel like very solitary experiences. You don't have a party of characters following you around. You don't have, you know, people say like, "Hey, meet me in the next town and I'll tell you what's going on there." You don't have that going on. They feel very solitary. I really like that. But like as far as a way to tell the story, it's fine with me. I also, I've talked about Yakuza a lot. That game ended with a 45-minute cutscene, and I liked it. So I'm not against that. So, but I don't know, the storytelling isn't quite my favorite thing about it, but it does lend to like the overall atmosphere of the games.
Do you think that if you were just to go through and kind of play Dark Souls, do you think if you just went through and weren't able to experience that story and just play the game all the way through, do you think you can still enjoy it the same amount? Is the story just really kind of like just extra if you want to explore and put in PC out of that puzzle a little more?
I think the story is the icing on top of the cake for sure.
Okay.
Because the first time I played Dark Souls, I didn't read the item descriptions. I had no idea who most of the characters were, and it became one of my favorite games of all time. And then I discovered, 5 years later that people had actually made these videos talking about the story. So yeah, not knowing the story doesn't affect me really at all in those games because, like I said, the play is so good.
One of the things that, and you mentioned this on your episode you did with the List Off guys about Death's Door.
Mm-hmm.
You said one of your big pet peeves these days, and I'm certainly guilty of this as well, is that every game that seems to have just a little bit of difficulty or have some kind of like soul gathering mechanic is all of a sudden classified as like a Souls-like game, or this game's like Dark Souls. And I know you took exception to that. So I just wanted to ask you a little bit about what do you think it is that, and you touched on a little bit, that makes a game Souls-like if it's not just rolling hard combat and collecting souls. It's obviously deeper than that. So how do you think people can be better about classifying a game as Souls-like going into the future? Because it literally seems like every hard game we come out is like, oh, this is like Dark Souls, or because it's hard or whatever. And that's really, people only scratch the surface of like what these games actually mean.
Right. To me, Dark Souls has a very particular rhythm to it, and like a kind of game feel to it that has been played with a little bit. Dark Souls 3 is faster than Dark Souls 1, and Bloodborne is faster than Dark Souls 3, and stuff like that. But I'm glad you brought this up because it does a disservice to any game that they say, like Death's Door, for example. People compared that to Dark Souls in reviews and stuff, and it's not a Souls-like game. You don't lose your stuff when you die. The combat is hard, but it's not the same kind of like take your time, bait out attacks, dodge around. Like every combat encounter is challenging and engaging. It's not the same. It's just hard. If you imagine playing Zelda: A Link to the Past, but it's difficult. That's what Death's Door is like. So when I came into Death's Door and people said it was a Souls-like, I was disappointed because it wasn't what I expected. So it did a disservice to Death's Door to describe it that way. It also does a disservice to the Souls games because it shows that people don't understand, like, yeah, they're hard. You can't just button mash your way through it, but that's not what it's about. It's not about how hard it is. People seem to have forgotten that, like, every NES game is balls hard. Like, has everyone just forgotten that, like, most NES games, most Super Nintendo games are really difficult? Like,
nobody would ever confuse those for Dark Souls ever.
Yeah, Dark Souls didn't invent the like idea of a difficult game. It's just people getting lazy with their comparisons. I've talked with Keith from the Main Quest about this. I think Mega Man X is impossible, but I've beaten Sekiro and all the Dark Souls games. Like, it's not like this is the only game that's difficult. So yeah, it just bothers me when people compare everything that's difficult, even if they're not trying to be like Dark Souls at all, classifying them as a Souls-like game just because they're hard. Yeah, like, and there's a couple games that I think are very Souls-like in a lot of ways, except for the combat. I think Hollow Knight is very Souls-y in some ways, except for combat, because combat in Hollow Knight is fast and zippy, and you're jumping around, and it's very acrobatic and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, just using Dark Souls as a descriptor for things that are difficult starting to drive me crazy.
I think that's very much a product of just kind of how modern gaming journalism is set up. Mostly because Dark Souls is, whenever you mention it, people pay attention, right? People
Yeah.
pay attention if something is quote unquote hard like Dark Souls, right?
So people will click on your article if you say like this new Souls-like, indie game. People are like, "Ooh, new Souls-like indie game? Okay."
Not only does that do a disservice to the legacy of Dark Souls, because if you just compare everything to like Dark Souls or Bloodborne or whatever, or to what From Software does, what they have done, when you talk about this era of gaming, I'm talking about like 2010 forward or however you divide them up. I think From Software leaves a very, very big mark on whatever era of gaming that they are classified to in history. So I think that does a really big disservice if, every hard game coming out you're just saying is Souls like. That's stupid. But does a big disservice to Death's Door, which deserves the chance to, stand on its own and be its own game, not just it's a Dark Souls like game and be classified as that, and potentially taking away people who might be turned off by that from a game that's otherwise pretty good. And I definitely don't think that's fair. But I think just people need to be, video game reviews in general just need to be smarter about the way they talk about those sort of things. Like, you can have a hard game and it not be Souls like. I think one game they do a really good job of that is one of my personal favorite games, Monster Hunter.
Right.
It's not exactly the same. I would say the combat in Monster Hunter is similar to Dark Souls. There's rolling, and it's not as speedy.
It's a bit more expressive in Monster Hunter, from what I can tell. Dark Souls is at its core, it's a very simple combat system. You're not jumping up in the air and doing these, special attacks like I see in all these Monster Hunter videos.
Right. I would say the base though is similar. Like, you have your weapon attacks and your roll and stuff like that, and limited amount of healing items you bring with you. But I would never ever in a million years try to make the argument that Monster Hunter is the same as Dark Souls.
Right.
Despite the fact that every enemy you fight in the game is a 30-minute boss fight, that no one in their right mind would do that. So that's just kind of me thinking off the top of my head. But you mentioned, I wanted to ask you about one, because I hear you talk a lot about like the Souls games and Bloodborne, and you did mention that you beat Sekiro.
Yeah.
Right? What are your thoughts? I don't know if I've ever talked to you about this or heard you on a show mention this. Maybe you did. What are your thoughts on Sekiro? Because I know Sekiro is kind of like the black sheep, I guess, of the From Software games. It's different. I feel like, just from reading people in the community and stuff, it's definitely probably the most divisive one, if I could be so bold as to say that.
Other than Dark Souls 2, I think it's the most divisive in the community. Yeah. I really like Sekiro. I think it's a lot of fun. I think part of the reason it's so divisive is because it is pretty different, even though it retains a lot of those same, ideals as Dark Souls, where, take every encounter seriously. Boss fights are like a repeat process to learn what they're doing and stuff like that. Lose your souls when you die and stuff, but Sekiro changed up a lot of stuff. It added stealth mechanics. It added tall grass to stealth around in and stuff like that. And that deflecting mechanic to weaken an enemy's posture bar and get a kill shot instead of like steadily decreasing their HP like in most action games. It's really different, and it's really demanding, like technically, like reflexively, like really demanding of you. So I get people who, because like especially Dark Souls 1, Demon Souls, Dark Souls 2, those are pretty slow games, and you need to have some degree of Twitch skill to beat those games, especially the harder bosses. But Sekiro is like very, very, like, you have to have, be able to react quickly and react in a basically perfect way, that I think put a lot of people off. Whereas in in the Souls games, it's a lot more slow paced, especially the earlier ones in the series. You can take your time. You can like kind of even in a boss fight, you can kind of take your time. You can quickly dodge out of the way of one thing and just watch attack animations and learn. And in Sekiro, it's a lot harder to do that, I think.
And I don't think that's a problem with Sekiro. I think that's more of a problem of, I understand in any community you're going to have purists, right, that want the original experience like not really distilled down or changed in any way. But I think From Software, you know, you had 3 Dark Souls games, right? So you have that experience. I think From Software has every right to explore, you know, a different take on their style. And
Yeah.
that's why Sekiro is one of the few Souls games that I've actually played a little bit, and I actually own. Yeah, that game is, and I've played probably 50 to 75% of Dark Souls 1. So yeah, those games are I mean, I understand, you can tell just by the style that they're From Software games, but
Right. They're very different, though.
It takes a different mindset. It does. Well,
Yeah.
like you said, you can kind of circle around and learn enemy attack patterns. It's like you got to be fast in Sekiro, otherwise you'll just get your ass handed to you. So
And yeah, and like I do think it's fair. Some people criticize the difficulty of a couple of the bosses in Sekiro. I think are like probably among the hardest things they've ever put in a game. And so like they start to approach this level of like, this is so difficult, it's not fun anymore. I have to be so perfect that I'm not really having fun doing this, and it becomes frustrating. That happens a couple times in Sekiro for a large number of people. It didn't happen for me, but I can't just like disregard the way that like a huge number of people feel about a couple of the bosses in Sekiro. Again, I didn't have trouble because I kind of gamed my way through that deflecting mechanic, but I know that there are so many people who think that the last boss in Sekiro is like hatefully difficult that I get it. I understand. I understand why a lot of people feel that way.
So do you think with the imminent release of Elden Ring here, one of the things that From Software has kind of talked about in regards to that game is their promise is there to like not cut corners on the difficulty, and they most certainly won't. But they have said that this is going to be like the most accessible of their games that they've ever put out. So just kind of your experience with them, and I know that both of us, I haven't watched any of the trailers or read too much on it, so I'm kind of in the same boat as you are. What do you think that looks like for them to say that, hey, this is the most accessible game so far, but them also not willing to cut corners? And this might be kind of a redundant question because we're about to know in like a day what this looks like. But well, I'm just curious to kind of get your thoughts on it before we experience it.
This is my prediction. But if you look at Bloodborne and Sekiro, there's not a whole lot of... Well, Bloodborne, I actually disagree with. This is the general consensus, even though I disagree with it for Bloodborne, that there's not a whole lot of player expression because... there's not a whole lot of different types of builds you can make in Bloodborne. I disagree with that, but in Sekiro, it's 100% true. You have to play Sekiro the way that From Software wants you to play. Like exactly the way they say you have to play Sekiro this one way. And what I think they mean, because that was their most recent game, what I think they mean in Elden Ring is that I think there's a stealth mechanic, if I remember correctly, so you can approach things stealthily. And then you have all of the classic Dark Souls build variety on top of that. So you have your stealth mechanic. I'm sure you can go any number of magic-based classes, stealth-based. You can do the classic Dark Souls thing of being a naked guy with a giant sword. You can express yourself and kind of tackle each challenge in a way that suits your playstyle, and that's not something that Sekiro let you do. So I think that's what they mean, is that they've added this stealth portion. It's open world too, so you'll be able to even approach things from the angle and like in the environment that you want to, I guess. Like, you know, say that there's an enemy and you can maybe even climb up on some rocks and, you know, attack them from above, and that's not something that Dark Souls let you do. All of these things are coming together that I think add to like player expression and the way that you want to tackle a certain situation. They're going to allow you to have a lot more freedom in Elden Ring, I think. Like I said, I haven't read any reviews, so I might just be wrong, but this is what I remember from like the very, very early coverage of it, like last year, you know.
Well, it's certainly shaping up to probably be one of the best games that comes out this year. So I'll be very excited to. I'm sure you'll be reacting on social media as you play it. So I'm very excited to hear your experiences with it as you dive into it. For someone who's a veteran of the series, that should be very exciting. Word about my time limit, so Dave, we're gonna wrap it up. I want to thank you so much for coming on. This was awesome to get to talk to you and kind of hear your experiences, and learn so much about the stuff that you like and about Dark Souls and about your shows. Like, it's really great, and this is really what I wanted this podcast to be about, was just people come on and tell me about their stuff and tell me about what they love. It's been fantastic. So thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, man. Thank you for letting me talk about myself and then letting me talk about Fromsoft, where my two biggest interests in my life.
Sometimes one or the other. It just depends on what day.
Exactly. Yeah, it's been a blast, man. I appreciate the opportunity to come talk to you again. And everyone listening to this, like, Eric's making appearances on my show from time to time too. So like, come check that out. We had a good conversation, and yeah, just thanks for the time, dude.
The Metroid Dread episode is going to be super cool. I'm very excited for that. It's going to be awesome. Why don't you take a minute to go ahead and plug all your stuff here?
Sure. So again, Tales from the Backlog is the video game show. Each episode, one game in depth, no spoilers until we warn you. You can find that anywhere you look for podcasts, but you can also find me on Instagram at Tales from the Backlog and on Twitter at TFTBLpod. The other one is a Top 3 podcast. You can find that on Instagram and Twitter at a Top 3 podcast with the number 3. Both of those. And that's, both of those shows are available on whatever podcast platform you listen to stuff. Go check that out for Tales from the Backlog. Find a game that you're interested in. Choose, whatever you want there. For a Top 3, we cover so many different topics. Any topic that you're interested in, you can find something there, I think.
Yeah, and obviously I will, all of his stuff will be linked down in the description, the show notes, all that good stuff. And cool. I normally do mine, but my stuff's linked down in the show description. If you really want to find it, go ahead and go down there. Just click on it. I have a personal Twitter, I have a podcast Twitter, Instagram, and you can email me if you feel like sending me hate mail about why you hate something I said. Mm-hmm. I'm still waiting for that. One day it will happen.
That's how you know you made it. When that happens, you made it.
Right, when you get the haters. So yeah, again, Dave, thank you so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. This was awesome, and I will certainly be calling you back on to talk about Elden Ring and talk about different stuff that happens this year. This year is shaping up to be probably one of the best years in recent memory for all of video games, just because of all the COVID stuff that got delayed. So we are going to have a lot of stuff this year.
Yeah, we talked about Elden Ring a lot, but there's a handful of other games that I'm incredibly excited about for this year. So I'll be looking forward to it, man. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. Thank you very much. And as always, everybody, make sure you stay safe, take care of yourself, and enjoy playing Elden Ring. Talk to you guys later.